family, and welcome to the podcast, In the Black of My Mind. I'm your host, Al Thomas, so settle in, enjoy the ride with us. I got you. Our guest tonight is a good friend, a multi-talented brother who is an actor, a director, award-winning writer, award-winning solo show performer, a producer, special effects director, teaching artist, stunt director, voiceover performer, constructs sets, and is a member of the Stagehand Union, and a whole lot of other stuff. But no, he don't do no windows. No,
No, don't do no windows, man. No.
We ain't going out like that. Yo, my good friend Glynn Borders, welcome
All
to
right.
the podcast.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. I'm glad you were able to do this, man. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Anytime, man.
Oh,
You know
all
how
right,
we
so
are.
then, right, so next week. No. Yo, man, let's go back to the beginning. Where were you born?
Come on, bruh. Come on, Detroit. Detroit. I'm showing you.
Okay.
Detroit versus everybody.
Right, exactly. The D. Well,
Well, as a cat, let me just throw this in real fast. I don't know the kid's name, who's not a kid now. He's a former student of my sister. My sister is a counselor at Cass Tech in Detroit, and one of her students came up with this in his senior year. Trademarked it and everything.
Oh, really?
That kid is swimming in dough.
Oh,
Because
I know
now
that's right.
everybody does. There's New York versus everybody. There's Connecticut versus
Right.
everybody. There's Texas versus everybody. This kid was smart.
Wow.
But Cass Tech is the smart kid school. So
Okay.
yeah.
Now, Cass Tech, you went to Cass Tech as well?
No, I went to the dumb school of McKenzie.
Now, Cass Tech,
they
that's
wouldn't
where
even
like...
they wouldn't even let me on the steps at Cass Tech.
Oh, that's messed up. I doubt that very seriously, though. I hear you. Now, did you come from a big family?
I'm from a mixed family in the sense that I call my stepdad my dad.
Okay.
My father's my father, my stepfather is my dad. And
Gotcha.
let me turn that down. And when he and my mother got married, she had my brother and myself, and then he had 3 kids from his first marriage. She had 2 from her first marriage, and then there's 1 between them.
Okay.
So ultimately it was 6 of us, but in and out because my step siblings, and we don't use the term, we just say brother and sister, but for clarity,
Right.
they stayed with their mother most of the time, but they stayed with us on weekends, entire summers, and holidays.
Oh, nice.
So
nice,
we
nice.
really did grow up together.
Right.
But my sister's the only one that's the counselor at Cass Tech. She basically grew up as an only child because we all grew up and moved away. She was born when I was 16.
Wow. Yeah.
So I was gone in 3 years after that, and everybody had just moved out. So she basically grew up, as an only child.
Yeah. Are any of them involved in the arts?
No, not really. My sister, because she's, a counselor, and they have a gigantic theater department, music department, everything department, and so a lot of her kids have moved on to do Broadway shows, movies.
What was growing up in the D like, man?
It's funny. Every day, Facebook brings back a lot of memories. There's always somebody that's posting something, and you go, "Oh man, yeah." Somebody posted the other day about going to big time wrestling at Cobo Hall.
Oh, wow.
That's what they called it back in the day, big time wrestling with the Sheik and Bobo Brazil, and
Right.
and so we had across the street before White Flight. No, actually, White Flight happened. Mr. McCarthy was the last one that stayed after White Flight. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
He was one of the promoters for big time wrestling, and he would give us ringside tickets to go to to wrestling matches. Not only that, give us round trip transportation all the way to Cobo Hall. He would take us in, seat us, bring us back, drop us off in front of my house, and everybody would disperse from there.
Wow.
So we did that kind of stuff all the time. We went horseback riding all the time. Being from Detroit, Canada's across the water.
Right.
So we would go over to Canada to
take the boblo boats.
No, you know what? I never been on a boblo. Boblo is it's just a little paddle boat. that goes
Right.
around Bablo Island, which
Gotcha.
I probably only went to when I was a kid because I had no memory of it. But every time I say I never been to Bablo, my siblings and my cousins go, "Yes, you have." I go, "How old was I? Was I an embryo? I do not, I
Wow.
do not remember it at all.
Wow.
You know, I have a faint view of the paddles going around, but that's it. So, but Canada, no, we took the either the tunnel or the Ambassador Bridge.
Okay.
It's just like here, going to take the tunnel, the bridge.
Oh, wait. Time out. There's a tunnel that goes from Detroit to Canada?
Yeah,
I
it
didn't know that.
yeah, exactly like the one that goes to Jersey or to Brooklyn from
Wow.
Manhattan. Yeah, exactly the
Right, right.
same. If somebody was to like kidnap me and drop me off in there, I go, "Oh, I'm in the tunnel to Canada," and I could be in New Jersey. You know, they
Wow.
look exactly the
Right.
same,
Oh,
except in
wow.
the middle, of course, you have the American flag and the Canadian flag. But
Mm.
we went back and forth to Canada all the time, and that's where I learned to ride horses. We were city kids who grew up on horses.
Wow.
Yeah, man, we got good by the time we were 13, 14 years old. And talking about
Yeah.
some straight up gallop, run. Once we were experienced riders, my brother, all my friends in the neighborhood, there was always, a lot of time we did trail riding until we got to be about 14. Then we stopped going to Canada and went to Pontiac, right where the Silver Dome used to be.
Mm.
And we used to ride there. That was open range.
Oh,
And
wow.
so there was always times where you get on a straightaway and whoever the lead wrangler would always say, "Okay, runners to the front." We'd all get to the front. Go. We run like a champ,
Wow.
running on horses.
Okay.
Then we started working so much, man. I had such an incredible childhood.
Mm.
Um, then by the time we were 14, we started working at Detroit racetrack and the racing horses. And we would
Mm.
go and in the morning on the summertime and catch the bus right on the corner that took us all the way to the last stop, which was um, oh God, I forgot what the town was. And anyway, you could stop at the last stop, and that was the stables. And
Mm.
we would go to the stables and try to get there at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Ooh.
and then just go around from the state. All the stables were connected. Go around stable to stable. You need a hot walker. You need a hot walker.
Mm.
Because when they run the horses in the morning, they got to cool them down by hot walking.
Oh,
And
right,
so
right.
you hire a kid for 30 minutes to walk them around the stables. And we got $5 per horse, and we would
Oh, wow.
average about 4 horses a week. So for a kid at 13 back then,
Oh, yeah.
20
That's a
bucks a
small
week.
fortune.
Oh yeah, that's a small fortune, man. We were doing good.
Oh, yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time going out to ride on the weekends and ride and then walking horses in the daytime. So I remember one day coming in from the stables, and my mother was in the kitchen cooking, and we came in through the back door. My mother turned around and went, "Y'all been working those horses so long, you're beginning to smell like a horse. Straight to the shower." Straight to the shower. We
Wow.
did. We began looking like horses, man.
Mm.
You be around them so much, you start to pick up their personalities.
Right.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. Plus, speaking of Canada, going back to that for a split
Mm-hmm.
second, my senior prom was in Canada
Really?
at the Elmwood Casino in
Wow.
Windsor, Ontario,
Okay.
and our special guest and entertainment was Ella Fitzgerald.
Wow.
How about
Wow.
that? How about that? Of course, we were too young and too stupid to truly appreciate her,
Right.
because of course, there was that clown girl that was imitating the scats and stuff, making all of us giggle,
Oh, you're right.
silliness like that. But
Wow.
Miss Fitzgerald she disarmed us. She heard us giggling up there at one point, and when the song ended, she gives a little look and she went, "My special guests tonight are Mackenzie High School on their prom." And all the real, rich white folks in their tuxedos all turned around and went, "That shut us up for the rest of the night."
Okay. Yeah. Right. Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Was
man.
it a big class?
My graduating class was 730,
Ooh.
and we were the second next to Cass Tech.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a huge class.
Yeah, my high school doesn't exist anymore. They tore it down and made a middle school. So let
Yeah.
me tell you the best part about growing up in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Detroit during the Motown era.
Exactly.
Come
Exactly.
on.
Exactly.
On Christmas Day, man, we would go to the Motown Review.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, they had them like 4 years in a row on Christmas Day.
Right, right.
And if they had them after that, we just probably got didn't want to do it anymore. But I think it was like 4 years in a row. And we'd get up in the morning, check out our gifts and whatnot, have breakfast, and then Dad would take us downtown to the Fox Theater, which I still
Fox
think,
Theater.
after all these years of working in theater, still the most beautiful theater I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
Oh man, it's incredible.
Mm.
And we would go down there, and for $2,
Mm.
we would see every act of Motown, from
Right, right.
Stevie all the way up to the Miracles and the Temptations, the Supremes. We were even there. I think it was the last one when you remember Red Earth rock band,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
very soulful rock band.
yeah.
Well, they were the
We're
first white.
gonna have a good time.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But they started off, they were a Motown group. They were the
Mm-hmm.
first white band Berry Gordy ever signed,
Mm.
and so they were on the ticket for the Motown Review, and so they brought on Stevie and whoever else, and somewhere towards the middle of the show, or was it the second act after intermission? Because I think they always had intermissions for little crazy kids to go use the bathroom and then come
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And so wherever they placed them, they come out, and the lead singer is, "We want to thank everybody for allowing us to play for you tonight." It's a white group on the stage of the Fox with the Motown Review, and I'd be like, "Boo, boo, boo!" And they said, "Oh, we thank you, we thank you." And then they started jamming, because back then, remember, their first two albums, they just covered Motown songs with a
Oh,
soulful
wow! I didn't
rock
know that.
edge.
Wow.
Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
Get Ready. Check out their Get Ready. Sometimes rocking. It's crazy. And I forgot what it was, but two or three Temptation songs they did, and they started playing, and everybody's like, "Boom, boom, whoa, yay!"
Wait a minute here.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
I mean, you gotta have a pair of this big to go in there, on stage with all these Motown groups, and go in there and instantly win everybody over. Those cats,
Right.
they were good, man. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I got to see all this stuff.
Wow.
Um, we got to see. We would run into cats all the time too.
Mm-hmm.
You would see Stevie. You would see, well, not so much Stevie, but you would definitely see Marvin and Smokey
Oh, okay.
hanging
Okay.
out. Mr. McCarthy is another story about Mr. McCarthy, the guy that was the promoter across the street with the wrestling. One year he took us to see boxing,
Mm.
and we went to this. It used to be a movie theater, but then it was really big, and they changed that particular night. They were having with club boxing, where they would start with the kids' ages and weights,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually towards the end of the night they started getting into the just maybe one lightweight adult fight, middleweight, one light heavyweight, and one heavyweight. So they didn't have a whole bunch, just one of each, but they started with the little kids boxing.
Okay.
So Mr. McCarthy takes us there in stage one. I'll never forget, with the marquee, stage one, and on the marquee was KO Cody. And so
K.O. Cody.
it's KO Cody. This is back in the early 70s, probably like
Okay.
1970.
Okay.
And KO Cody's up on the marquee. And so we're standing in the line. Mr. McCarthy's getting us our tickets, and up drive two red Eldorado convertibles, one and one behind it.
Mm.
One was Smokey,
Uh-huh.
and one was Marvin.
Oh wow.
And they get out, and the valets go park the car, and we're like, "Marvin, Smokey, Marvin, Smokey."
Mm.
We're losing our little 12-year-old minds, or whatever. No, we're a little older than that, losing our minds over them and whatnot. And so Mr. McCarthy put us in this area up in the balcony that was just right above the entrance, going in and out.
Okay.
And so KO Cody had the beautiful silk robe with KO Cody in the back. And he going around, and he's shaking hands and kissing babies before the fight. Instead of in the back warming up or doing whatever, he's
Right.
out politicking.
Oh no.
So finally, after all the fights are over, and it's time for KO Cody, we're up there in the valley. KO Cody, KO Cody. We're going nuts. Man, KO Cody got knocked out in the first round. In the first round.
Oh man.
And so
Dang.
Marvin and Smokey, I try to make a quick exit, but they got to go under us to the exit. and we're like, we're Lemons, Marvin, Smokey, and they're like doing one of these, Yeah, man, that's a great memory. That's a
I'm
really great
sure.
memory.
I know that's right.
Yeah, we had a
Dang.
lot of fun. So we had a lot of interesting, crazy, and it was just normal to us. I mean, I guess it's like growing up in Hollywood and you see movie stars everywhere.
Right.
We just saw the Supremes or whoever, everywhere.
Mm.
So it was cool. It was a fun place to grow up.
And then you grew up, in Detroit when all that unrest and stuff, man. When like when Martin Luther King was killed, and
Well, even we had riots 2 years in a row. Well, actually 3 years in a row. There was a riot on the east side in 1966, where my grandparents lived, just where we moved away from. The following year, it happened on the west side on 12th Street, which is the big Detroit riot that just kind of set the whole country off. And then in '68 was when Dr. King got assassinated. So we moved on the Upper West Side, and I said it again, Upper West Side, Northwest, the Northwest Side, which was pretty suburban at the time. So we were I think we were the 8th black family that moved into the neighborhood, and so we were really cool with all our new neighbors. We were their new neighbor, but we were cool with everybody. They would invite us over their houses. We played with their kids, and we had a baseball team, and we were all on the same baseball team. And we moved there in 1966. In 1967, the big riot happened. Well, all of a sudden, all those people who used to invite us over on Sunday for pancakes were sitting on their porch with their rifles. Making sure we knew that they had the rifle. And then in '68, Dr. King was assassinated, and so that was 2 riots in a row. By '69, I wrote a piece that I wrote a screenplay of. I almost got it sold, but it didn't go. Called For Sale Signs, and For Sale Signs was all our friends, white friends, when they left the neighborhood, didn't say goodbye.
Wow.
The families moved in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And we went down to their houses, and the houses were empty, and there were for sale signs on the front lawn.
Wow.
And that's why I called it for sale signs. They never said goodbye. They just put up the for sale sign.
Dang.
And so when I got to high school in '69, Mackenzie was 70% white and 30% black. 3 years later, when I graduated in '72, in a class of 730, there were 4 white kids in my graduating class.
Really?
They got out of there fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Because of Facebook, I am in touch with one of the guys that used to live down the street. He's a lawyer now. And he said, yeah, they moved to Hillsdale. Their daddy got them out. I said, you guys didn't even say goodbye. He said, yeah, daddy said we had to get out quick. Whoa! Y'all had us over for pancakes last week.
Right now, the house.
Your mama was flipping them and serving all of us, and that was on a Sunday.
Wow.
And then the following Sunday, because the riot began on a Sunday, and so they got the hell out of there.
Wow.
But it was still just a great place to grow up, great neighborhoods.
Nice.
We had the best radio stations because, in terms of the music, everything was about the radio back in those days.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
And the first black-owned radio station was in Detroit.
I didn't know that.
It's either WJLB or WCHB. I always get the two mixed up. I think it's JLB. But yeah, so we getting showing up soul music.
Yeah, I know that's right.
Yeah. But what's funny is we also got the Canadian station, which was like the top 40 station.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could do. So when you were driving out of town, you'd lose all the Detroit channels, but then you start picking up all that stuff that's Middle America.
Right.
And that Canadian station went everywhere. They had such a powerful antenna, man. You could be in Illinois and still pick up CKLW. Wow. Yeah, man. Yeah. All about back in those days. It's all about the music now. It's just that they do it differently. For us, everything is about the radio. And that's what made you go out and buy the records, and you bought the 45 or the album. But if you were a kid, you bought the 45
or the 8-track.
The 8-track was more so in your later on it was the 8-track. Yeah, but when I was a kid, it was about the 45.
Oh yeah, oh definitely.
Yeah.
definitely.
And so I say that because growing up, in Motown, we saw all the labels, but all the labels that were Motown labels were the labels that jumped out at us all the time.
Mm.
So and all that kind of stuff is just gone. But that was such a big part
Yeah.
of my childhood. So anytime I think of record labels, I think because there was Motown, there was Tamla, there was so many different Motown labels.
Right, right, right.
Because Smokey was on Stevie was on Tamla, I think it was,
Mm.
but that was a Motown label.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get into acting?
Um, it's, you know how it is when you're an artist, man. It's in you.
Mm.
Growing up in a Midwestern town like Detroit, that's all about get a job in the factory and buy yourself a house.
Right, right.
It was kind of hard to tell anybody that was what I wanted to do. It was just always a young artist. I had an artist brain. I will say because I haven't worked with kids as much as I worked with kids. I began to notice it in them. There is an artist brain that a lot of kids have very young, and they have a sense of what they want to do, whether they know how to do it or not.
Right, right.
And I didn't know how to do it. And I was writing my own comic books and drawing my own comic books and writing my own stories and doing this and that. And I think by the time I got to be a senior in high school, I began to express it. By 10, I kind of knew, but I was afraid to tell anybody, first of all, because I knew I would be laughed at.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I kept it to myself. But by the time I got to be a senior in high school, I remember going to, they were doing Raisin in the Sun,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
the I guess the spring production before we go to summer break, and that voice in my head was go to audition, go to the audition, go to audition.
Mm.
Like, okay, I'm gonna go to the audition. And I walked in. I remember they had a stage door, and I walked in through the stage door, and I looked up and I saw all the people sitting around the table, and I saw the people sitting in front of them. They turned and looked at me, and I turned around and walked out.
Oh no!
I was petrified,
Wow! Wow!
petrified, and so even today, nobody from my high school knew that I would even do anything like this because they never saw any. They were never witness to me doing anything.
Right! Right!
So I went into pre-med first. I went to Highland Park College in Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and for 13 months I was a pre-med student. I was,
Oh wow!
you know, but then I started and I was pretty good because I was really good in science. I was
Mm-hmm.
a science student. Now, when we get to chemistry, let's get out of it because chemistry involves math, and when it involves math, I'm a 2-year old. I'm an absolute 2-year old. Doctor, yes, yes, Doctor 2-year old who can't do math. So,
Wow!
so since I was intimidated to take chemistry, I backed out of that because
Okay.
I wasn't going to go in there and just be humiliated every single day because I was a weakling in math.
Mm.
So then I knew I had to get out of Detroit to find myself and
Mm-hmm.
literally to find myself because you know, finally I graduated. Vietnam was hanging over my head. It didn't end until 73. I graduated in 72. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying not to get that letter
Mm-hmm.
that's saying, forget your dreams. you know, your ass belongs to us.
Right! Right!
you know.
Right!
Um, so, um, so I started doing what I heard the white guys say. I signed up as conscientious objector. What is that? It'll keep you from going to Vietnam. Oh, I signed up for that. They let me be 1C for a couple of months, 3 months maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they changed my classification to 1F. I don't know what that meant.
I don't either.
I don't remember. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you missed all of that, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was the last
I
of
just
the.
enlisted.
Yeah, I was the. Yeah, well, you know, I was the last of the draftees. I guess you could say
Right.
I
Right.
was in that last
Exactly.
year. So I missed down by the skin of my teeth.
Mm.
And and I was watching um, the Watergate stuff every day, because Nixon's promise was, if I get reelected, I will end Vietnam.
Mm.
And so that was the first time I could vote. I voted for
Right.
Nixon because he said he was going to end Vietnam.
Wow. Wow.
I ain't the only one.
Oh yeah, I
A
know.
bunch
I
of us
know.
did. And
Yeah.
then when he got reelected, like he went even more. He went to Saigon. Like we're gonna just bomb everybody now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Watergate happened, and his back was against the wall. He went, oh, by the way, let's end the draft.
Mm.
To try to smooth things out.
Right. Right. Right.
I'm going
Right.
to do one of my campaign promises. So the draft went away. So I was heading to my best buddy's home a block away, and there's an alleyway that we would take as a shortcut. And I'm on my way to see him, and he's on his way to see me. And we both got the same thing. We got to get out of Detroit.
Mm.
And he said, "Yeah, man, I found another school, this junior college in Lansing Community College. A friend of mine said that they're really quick to give away money."
Mm.
And so we jumped on the Greyhound the next day. We went to Lansing, and they were quick to give away money. We got in. We got a big financial aid package. We didn't get paid back. Who cares? We got
Right. Right.
grants too, though. Actually,
Mm.
we
Okay.
got big time grants and small loans.
Mm.
And we just kind of walked in, and so I went home, and and I knew we were getting ready to move the following month. This was August, and so we moved in September.
Mm.
And so I told my mother, you remember Everybody Hates Chris?
Yeah. Yeah.
His mother, that
Yeah.
was my mother. That was my mother. Okay, that's why I would watch Everybody Hates Chris and sweat, because that was my mother. So I went to tell her, Mom, found a school. We're gonna move to Lansing. And she looked me right in the eye. She said, "Says who?" And I went, "Says me."
Yeah. Right.
And we did. We moved
Mm.
there, and I messed around in different majors
Mm.
until I did radio, I did television.
Mm.
Then I found out that there was a major that included all of them, and then I took that radio, television, film,
Mm.
and then I took an acting class. And as soon as I landed in that acting club, within 5 minutes, I knew I'd found myself.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
went, "Oh, this is it." So I still did all the other stuff as well because I had a passion for that. But the theater thing, man, just
Mm.
as soon as, and I always say that when an artist of any kind, if you're a young musician and nobody knows you play guitar, but you play guitar, or whatever, and as soon as you find yourself in a room full of guitar players,
Mm.
you find yourself.
Right. Right.
And so I found myself. So that's the moment I started doing it. And we had two professional theaters in Lansing. One was the Boar's Head Theater, and
Mm.
one was Arts Encounter, which was the children's theater. And they were both in the same theater, and I got hired by both.
Mm.
So I got in, because every now and then they needed a colored guy. And but with the children's theater, I became the premier actor, because I had so many physical skills, from taking dance classes and whatever. But I was an athlete all my life. I played football and basketball since I was, those little 8-year-old kids you see in full pass hitting. I was one of those kids,
Right. Right. Right.
played basketball at Saint Cecilia. So, I played under George Gervin and all those cats, and Spencer Haywood. And
Wow.
these are the cats I grew up under, and I played ball with them,
Wow. Wow.
but so I had all this athletic ability, and so it just worked well in terms of being a physical actor to be the lead actor for a children's theater.
Mm.
And so I was making some decent money. Plus, I also was the athletic director of the boys' club at the very same
Oh,
time,
so you was definitely in hustle mode
and,
back
and
then.
taking class. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
one of my kids, and I always tell people this: one of my kids, when I became the athletic director of the boys' club, was Urban Johnson.
Really?
I'm 6 years older than him.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
much now,
Yeah.
but then, he was
Right.
still.
Right.
When I
Right.
first met him, he was at Rich Junior High School. I went to. Somebody said, "Let's go see this game," because we went to every game. We went to everything. We went to state games. We went to high school games. Rich Junior High. Why are we going to go see a junior high school game? They wait till you see this kid. And there was this kid out there jumping center and playing point guard named Irvin. They haven't heard started calling him Magic yet. Just Irvin Johnson. And then found out he was one of my kids at the boys club. So I've always called him EJ. I've never called him Magic. He hates when we call him Magic. We call him EJ. But we all these things was going on, man, all at the same time. And then I started being in better shows. Started writing my own shows. We got a company called the Last Minute Hookup, which was a sketch comedy company, which is actually the very first performance I ever did. I didn't think of it that way. But I wrote all the shows and directed all the shows and was in a lot of the sketches. And when I saw that people laughed where I thought they would laugh, and all that kind of stuff, because it was a sketch comedy, and I've never tried to see if anything that I was writing was getting laughs, but here was the first chance. Wow, people were laughing, so I was hooked. So I kept doing that and acting and whatnot, and then I felt that I was getting a lot of local press. I was constantly in the local newspapers. I was often on local television shows, and I went, maybe it's time to move into a bigger city and try to be a big fish in a big pond. Although I do love being a big fish in a small pond. Right. Or if I could be a small fish in a big pond. Right. It's a big pond, so why not? So I applied to the Hartman Theater Conservatory in Stamford.
Yeah, Rosa Hartman Theater.
Yeah. And I flew out here my very first time on a plane, my very first time to New York. And I flew out here for my audition. They picked me up. It's, cat holding my name there, and picked me up and took me all the way to the theater. My very first experience, and getting the star treatment. And takes me to meet Gene Frankel, who was the artistic director, and they had one scholarship. And Gene auditioned me, and he said to me right there on the spot, he said, "I'm going to give you the scholarship.
Wow.
I think this will be good for you."
Wow.
So 3 weeks later, I was living in Stamford. And one thing I used to do at when I was in Lansing with the theaters that I worked in is I never wanted to do tech. Tech was beneath me. I was an artiste. I didn't do tech.
Right.
But it was a requirement to do a certain amount of tech. So I would always like grab a hammer and walk around looking like I was busy. Just total, have that look on my face and walk from downstage to upstage, offstage that way. Just moving around with a hammer in my hand, not doing anything. Ultimately not fooling anybody at all.
Acting.
Acting. So when I got to Stanford, I pulled the same game. Tech. Tech's beneath me. And it was harder to get away from it because this is a much bigger production company. I mean, Boar's Head Theater, they were both regional theaters, except this one was and Boar's Head was a mid-sized theater. But had a big following and whatnot. But they were in Lansing, Michigan. But Stanford, the Hartman Theater, as you know, was in the Palace Theater back in the day, which is a big old opera house. So it was a much bigger organization. So trying to get away with Bull was a little harder. So I don't know how it happened. I think me and my buddy Leo were riding along one day, and I saw the Yearwood Community Center. And I had already, at the boys club, not only was I the athletic director, I used to teach, whatever I learned, I always taught as an actor. So I would get a bunch of kids together, teach them something, and all of a sudden now I got a little troupe.
Right.
Well, when I found out about the Yearwood Center, I borrowed Leo's card. I went up there and talked to the executive director, whose name I do not remember.
Was that Charlie Uckert?
Yeah, that's what it was. That's exactly who it was.
Charlie Uckert.
And I went in and spoke to him, and he said, "This is your lucky day. Whoever the woman was that was teaching the Yearwood players, I don't remember her name.
I don't remember.
She resigned yesterday."
Wow.
So he said, "So if this would be great if you could pick right up. And so I did. So I became, the director of the Yearwood Players, teaching
Mm.
acting, doing plays, and where you and I met,
Right.
many,
Exactly.
many, many moons
Exactly.
ago.
Yeah.
And so that just became a thing. So now all of a sudden here I am, a teaching artist. I taught myself to be a teaching artist, and so
Mm.
everywhere I go now, if I need work, I go find that community center, that school program, whatever, and that would be how I make my way around. And I just started working in a lot of schools, doing a lot of theater, and that goes also to help get me hooked. Because
Mm.
not only was I hooked in performing and writing, but now I got hooked in teaching.
Mm. Mm.
Because helping develop artists is a very cool thing to do as well.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And I got hooked into that, and that's basically it. And then once I finished at the Hartman, I ended up in New York, following Gene Frankel because he had his school here. It was no longer in Stanford. He came to New York, so I followed him to New York at his
Mm-hmm.
school here in New York, and then eventually found my way here to live here, and I've just been doing theater my entire adult life. And the thing about it is, people always laugh. You can get theater. No, you can't get a job in that. What's wrong
Right.
with you?
Right. Right.
You
Right.
can't do that. I used to watch television with my family, and yeah, I remember watching the Ed Sullivan show and going, yeah, that's a cool job. I want to do that. And then
Right.
being told, you can't do that. That's over there. You're over here. Well, didn't I work at the Ed Sullivan Theater for 22 years?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right where the
right.
Ed Sullivan show was shot.
Mm.
I just came here, and as thing I always say, things fall out of the sky into my lap. That
Mm.
gig fell out of the sky into my lap. For 22 years, I worked at the Ed Sullivan Theater. 11 of those years, I was the lone special effects director, but I shared special effects director for 15 of the 22 years that I was there because I had gotten my certification and whatnot. And there
Mm.
was times when they needed two special effects director, my boss and me.
Mm.
And before I know it, now all of a sudden I'm in big time television.
Right.
You
Right.
know, working for David Letterman. I worked for SNL. I worked for Conan O'Brien. I became everybody's go-to guy for certain effects on Broadway.
Mm.
I wasn't acting as much anymore. I did my show, The Dark Star from Harlem, The Spectacular Rise of Josephine Baker, which
Mm.
I'm pointing to now,
Right.
um, which has done well for us. We did that many years ago, and now we just finally brought it back. I finally retired from television, from the union,
Mm.
and did our show. And I guess that kind of brings you up because now my whole life is about trying to raise money for this show,
Mm.
and writing, trying to get grants to do other things that I want to do. But you know,
Mm.
uh, it's just being in arts is all I really wanted to do.
I know, I'm sure. Same here, but that's a story for another day too. But on the Letterman show, I know you had opportunity to interact with a lot of the guests there on the show
Yeah.
and stuff. Who are some of the people that you had the opportunity to interact
Oh
with?
God, who haven't I had? Let me give you a great story.
All right.
Um, so one day, Snoop is a guest, and you could always tell when Snoop was there because you smell it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Is Snoop here today? Yeah, Snoop must be here today because that's some strong
Mm.
pungent shit right there. Excuse
Right,
me.
right, right.
Yeah, um, yeah. So Snoop was on. Russell. Oh God, the quarterback just got let go from Denver.
Wilson.
Russell Wilson
Mm-hmm.
was there, and I was in a conversation backstage with them. We're in a commercial,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in a conversation with Snoop and Russell Wilson, and I didn't even know that Barry Sanders was a guest that day.
Oh
And
wow.
so I looked over to my left, and Barry Sanders is being escorted backstage. And I said, "Excuse me," to these two cats. And I go over to, and shake Barry's hand. I say, "Barry, this is such an honor. I'm from Detroit, and you broke my heart when you walked away."
Mm.
Snoop overheard it and walked up and went, "Yeah." you broke my heart too. Everybody cracked up.
Oh man. Man, I'm not a Detroit Lions fan, but he broke my heart too, man.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh man,
Yeah,
everybody
that's
loved
one
it.
of my
Oh,
favorite stories. But
wow.
and Darlene Love, who comes on and does the Christmas
Yeah, yeah,
song.
yeah.
I did the snow effect for her for 15 years.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. I know that song. When I hear that song, when it gets that last chorus, it's like, okay, effect, start dropping the snow,
Mhm, mhm,
cue the
mhm.
snow, that we did in the studio, oh yeah, I work with some of everybody, man. I mean, I some of the cool jobs that I tell people that I've had over the years. I called Diana Ross Dame Ross because she wanted to produce our show at one time, and
Oh really?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh wow.
and but that fell through, because she
Mhm.
started trying to divide and conquer us rather than inviting the creative team over her place together. She would one person at a time. So when she's trying to
Oh
divide and conquer us, because
yeah,
she's
yeah,
trying to do
yeah.
her own Josephine Baker project, you
Mhm.
know. But anyway, when she would come on Letterman, my job as the special effects director was to blow her hair. So I would be off on camera one in front of her with a wind machine blowing her hair.
Wow.
So when Destiny's Child came along, I had to blow all their hair.
Oh wow.
So I would have to hire a couple of other guys, and we'd stand there wherever they were, and we would blow their hair.
But
And then it
what
was
would you use?
a little small wind machine,
Oh okay, okay.
like a fan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a little more powerful than a fan, but
Mhm.
basically just a fan.
Wow.
But it's more directed. So what you aim at is what you're gonna get. A fan, you can aim at something, but it kind of spreads out everywhere. You might not
Right.
get what you're aiming for. But here, whatever you aim for, you aim for the hair, and the hair is blowing all over. You thought that was for real, huh? And so then when Beyonce became a solo act, that was the job. Every time she came on, I blew Beyonce's hair.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I've had some crazy jobs like that,
Oh, I'm
worked with
sure.
people like that. Um,
Setting folks on fire and
Set
stuff.
folks on fire, which was my specialty. I set stuntmen on fire, not just folks, set stuntmen on fire, but most importantly, I put them out.
Right.
You know,
I remember when you first told me you setting fire. I said, wait a minute, you get to set people on fire and stuff. Where can I sign up for that?
you
Can
did
I
say
get
that.
down?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's a whole thing to it. Is a professional stunt man. He signs off on it. He does all his safety stuff. I do all my safety stuff. The fire department is always there to make sure that even during rehearsal, they're there for rehearsals and they're there for the show. They
Hmm.
There's always some inspector that's whose job that was assigned to us, and to make sure that we did everything correctly and nobody got hurt. I always had to have in the green room a couple of EMS just in case something went wrong. Um, and so it was a whole big thing. It wasn't just set the cat on
Oh
fire.
yeah,
We,
yeah. No,
we had
I'm
a we,
sure.
we,
I'm
we
sure.
had a whole thing that we had to go through.
Right.
But yeah, but it was this one particular stunt man, easily I set him on fire 25 years, so 25 times over 15 years,
Wow.
if not
Wow.
more than that. Well, I
Right.
think
Right.
there was one uh, set of times where we did this bit called "Man on Fire," where Dave would have like for some whatever stupid reason, yeah, he'd have on the fake CEO of Delta Airlines. If they had some kind of problem that other than a crash, some kind of problem that happened at Delta Airlines. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's a problem here at Delta Airlines, and now we got the CEO to come on and explain it to us. And then all of a sudden, you'd hear the music start up, and then the guy comes running on, and he's on fire. And then he runs off stage,
Mm.
and the director had when he runs off, but he had a certain shot that I got used to him having. And so what I would do is I put the cat out, and then I would send some more with the CO2 fire extinguishers, and then I would send out clouds of CO2 wafting across, and the clouds
Oh.
started getting applause.
Okay.
So every time we did it, I would always finish it off with a big cloud wafting out,
Right.
and
Right.
and the audience would go crazy. And so
Mm.
all of a sudden, that bit got to be so popular that Dave told the audience, well, this is an expensive bit for us to do. So people started sending in their own personal checks saying,
No.
yeah. So it's like, it's like I own a hot dog stand, Joe's Hot Dogs. And so tonight's Man on Fire is brought to you by Joe's Hot Dog Stand in Bumfup, Illinois, and the
Wow.
band on fire would go out. And so it got so popular that we did like 20 of those in a row,
Wow.
and
Right.
the stuff like that just keeps me working.
Mm. Oh, yeah,
That's before
exactly.
I was the assistant when we first started doing it,
Mm.
so that kept coming. I was always I was a freelancer, so they called me in when they needed me, which was often. But
Mm.
while we were doing Man on Fire, when I was the assistant, just kept me working. And then ultimately, my boss moved on to a different theater, and then I took over the special effects director's job.
Gotcha. So I mean, any of that stuff, like when Dave throw the pencil through the window and it breaks and stuff.
Now
That's
that's sound effects.
oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
special effects.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
if so
Yeah.
if so if it moved, burned, smoked,
Mm.
I used to have a whole thing for it. I have it set in so long I can't do it fast anymore. But there's certain things that make a special effect. Just for example, this is because in our union there's departments, and so the electrics department does anything electrical. The carpentry department does anything with scenery or carpentry. But
Mm-hmm.
moving scenery is their thing because that's the carpenter's department. The props department are the people that put the things on the where they belong and whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the special effects department. So there was this joke that went on between in our union that if at the Ed Sullivan Theater, because Ed Sullivan used to always have the animals come on, but we did that
Right.
too. We had animals, we had horses, we had a alligator that we all had to wrangle.
Oh.
Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
no.
yeah, oh, yeah. There's a story in that too. Horses, elephants,
Right.
camels, you name it, insects of all kinds, and exotic and whatever. We've had it all on the show.
Wow.
And so the joke was, if a camel takes a dump on the stage, who picks it up? Is it a prop or is it a special effect? And the answer is, it's only a special effect if it's steaming. Otherwise, it's a prop. So the
It's a
prop
problem.
department got to go out there and take it.
Oh man. Dang.
Yeah.
Oh,
I do
that's
miss it
funny.
though. I've been retired now 7 years, man,
Right. Right.
and the first 3 years is like I never watched the show anymore. I never watched Colbert. I worked for Colbert for 1 year, Dave for
Right.
21 years. I
Right.
never watched the show.
Mm.
If I watched the show, it's because I was watching the news and I can't find the remote.
Right.
So it's
Right.
on, but and it used to be I don't care, and now when I watch it's like, oh man, that was my home for a very long time.
Right.
That's where the
Right.
Supremes were. That's where the Temptations were. That's where the Beatles were.
Right.
The
Topo
Stones,
Gigio.
Topo Gigio, all of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Got to listen to Paul Schaefer and the band
Oh
rehearse and
man.
play
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single
Yeah.
day.
Oh.
I got to work with all the bands that came in. I was really cool with a lot of the bands.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool with George Clinton and his people.
Okay.
One year we had them on for New Year's Eve. Well, that's when we did shows on New Year's Eve. So that was a long time ago.
Mm.
And George was on New Year's Eve on the Late Show, and he had everybody. He had all those stiff people from the Midwest standing up. So
Wow.
George's manager comes over to me and said, George wants you to be his guest tonight. He's playing at wherever on 34th Street. I forgot the name of the theater.
Mm.
He wants you to be his guest tonight. So yeah, so I would show up, and not only did they have me as a guest, I had a backstage pass, and
Oh, nice. Yeah.
yeah, because I was out in front. I got in with my ticket, and I'm out front and hanging out and playing. I'm ran into an ex girlfriend. She was there, and we're
Mm.
jamming. And then Marcy, that was her name. Marcy finds me and said, George wants you backstage. He wants you backstage. What? And so she said, I got to go. So she left.
Mm.
I go backstage. I'm backstage. And George, you know how George is in Funkadelic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They got a large number of musicians. They never take a break. They just
Oh yeah,
rotate
yeah,
the musicians.
yeah.
For 4 hours,
Hours.
I'm
Yeah.
backstage with in the wings with the band
Mm.
the entire time. And my girl Felicia Collins, that plays guitar on
Yeah,
Letterman.
yeah.
Yeah, whoever's in town, Felicia sits in with everybody and she jams because she can play.
Wow.
She's a great
Oh
lead
yeah, she
guitar
can play.
player.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Felicia's out there playing. I'm in the wings, and the entire night I'm back there hanging out with the band, and it's one of these numbers. But yeah, and so that was New Year's Eve. I mean, come on,
Mm.
man. Um,
Man, I know,
um,
bro. I know all too well because I was friends with Peanut that
mhm,
sang with him. He sang with Bootsy's Rubber Band, and he also sang with P Funk.
yeah,
And I remember going in the green room when he would come to town. We would take him out to dinner and stuff. And I remember going in the green room, man, and then he was like, "Who's got a joint?" So somebody passed a joint. So then somebody else come with a joint. Somebody else would come with a pipe. Somebody else. Next thing you know, I thought I was in a Cheech and Chong movie or something, man. It was crazy, man. I was like, "Yo, I gotta go. I can't see anymore. I can't see. I can't. You know.
yeah. Them
Yeah.
brothers, they smoke a lot of weed, man.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
But it's fun to be back there and witness it because they're just being chill,
Oh yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah,
they go
yeah.
on stage and kick
And
butt,
yeah, yeah, and
It was
kill it.
just amazing to
Yeah,
watch. But I
yeah.
watched so many musicians like that. Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl was
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
cool with Dave Grohl. The thing that was so great that everybody knew my face, nobody knew my name, and so everybody would come to the show, and the first thing they do come big hug from me, whether it was
Mm,
Dave Matthews, Dave Grohl,
mm,
Usher,
mm,
whoever,
mm-hmm,
they
mm-hmm.
always a hug.
Wow.
Because they know when they go to the late show, this cat's going to be there doing the effects, and
Right,
I was
right.
just one of those faces that was there, and so I got a lot of love from a lot of people, and it was just an amazing time, and I was both looking forward to and dreading the day that Dave would retire.
Mm, mm.
Looking forward to because you get tired of production companies, and so the people around the big dog get to be a pain in the butt. It's like, oh, I'll be glad when they're gone.
Mm,
you know?
mm.
But you got to be careful what you wish for because you
Right,
might
right.
get it,
You just might get it. Yeah.
And they got it, and Dave retired, and I enjoyed my 1 year with Colbert, but Colbert ain't Letterman.
Mm, mm,
He just
mm.
ain't Letterman.
Right,
And
right,
the
right.
show's not the same anymore, and
No,
they
no.
don't do any effects. It's really rare. And so the guy that replaced me, and they let me uh, replace myself.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so I trained a friend of mine who worked there,
mm-hmm.
and he's got the gig. And and he's making really good money to do no effects. So he sits in the office that I set up, and like me, because with Dave, you never know. We were always busy. There was always something going on. They were very creative. But Colbert,
Mm-hmm,
they don't do any of that stuff. There's no
mm.
outside stuff. There's no dropping stuff off the roof.
Off the roof.
There's nothing. They don't do anything. And so my,
Wow.
my boy just gets to, the rock and roll look during the show, which
Mm-hmm,
the hazers, and I set the hazers up. All he got to do is refill them and turn them on, clean them when it's time to, send them out to clean them, and that's it. And so the rest of the time, he's in the office doing like I used to do during Colbert days,
oh, okay, okay.
watching Netflix. I watched 4 seasons of Netflix of Orange is the New Black.
Oh, okay, okay.
During my time, because I've been hearing about it, and so they just we were always busy with Letterman, but with Colbert was nothing. It's like sit in your office and collect all that money,
Right. Wow.
And so now when I look at the show, it's just like, man, I could be doing this in my sleep and still
Right, right.
collecting that big check.
Mm. That's all right. You about to get some big checks now because you
Yeah,
get you're doing that the
yeah,
Dark Star of Harlem.
yeah. Get the Doc Star from Harlem back up. That's what I'm
Yeah.
working on now. You know, who
Yeah. And
whoever
for
said
those
that?
that don't know, it's a story of Josephine Baker.
Yeah, it's a coming of age story of Josephine Baker. It's
Mm.
about 19-year-old Josephine Baker going to Paris and the first few years that she's there and the stuff she goes through and the
Mm.
foundation that's set for the person she becomes in the future.
Mm.
But we don't deal with anything over 30. It's just
Gotcha.
young Josephine Baker
Mm.
going over to Paris, not being able to speak a lick of French, and just taking over the damn country.
Wow. Wow.
Basically,
Yeah,
she
yeah,
just
yeah.
she showed everybody how to live. And the thing about it, it's literally 100 years ago. Next
Wow.
year, 2025 will be the 50th anniversary of Josephine's death, as well as the 100th anniversary of Josephine going to Paris for the first time.
Wow.
Both in the same year.
Right,
Only Josephine could pull that off.
right.
So I am trying to get um, money to do the show again. I would love to. I was pushing for Josephine Baker week, but now I'll be happy to get Josephine Baker day
Mm.
because raising money ain't my forte.
Right,
I'm
right,
doing the
right.
best I can. I'll get what I need. I'm sure, but
Mm.
it's a very important celebration.
Oh, truly, truly.
And so the French have been doing things. They in 2021 they put her remains in the Parthenon, which is the highest honor of anybody in France. I mean, I don't even think Napoleon is in the Parthenon.
Wow.
Okay, not
Wow.
Parthenon, Pantheon, not Parthenon. That's Greek. Yeah, the Pantheon.
Mm.
Um, and so it's only 8 people altogether in the Pantheon. And Josephine, no,
Oh,
it's only 8 women
oh,
in
okay.
the Pantheon, and she's
Wow.
number 8 and the first non-French born person, definitely the first African American
Mm.
person,
Mm.
woman. And yeah, so uh, 46 years after her death, they move her to the Pantheon.
Wow.
Last year, Christian Dior Fashions did they did their entire spring collection based on Josephine Baker.
Wow.
So
Wow.
Josephine is still big in
Yeah.
Paris, still
Yeah.
big in Europe, and in America. They go, who,
Right. Right. Right.
who,
Yeah.
you
Folks
know?
really need to know.
Yeah. So that's my mission, is to get this show up in 2025.
Good. Good.
Because and the thing about it is, people don't even realize that she was one of 2 female speakers at the March on Washington in 1963.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the movie Rustin,
Yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah. 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 Yeah.
they
I
don't even
saw.
mention it. And
Yeah.
I and I,
Right.
and I spoke to the director about it because I went to a screening of it. I said, why didn't they even mention her? And he said, yeah, there's over time, they just wanted to make sure that it was about getting it up, not who necessarily was on it, because they were talking about getting female speakers.
Mm-hmm.
And so because that's what the black women wanted. They wanted some female speakers, and of course the men didn't have any female speakers. And so they came up with one other woman whose name is escaping me right now. The other one was Josephine Baker, who they had to bring in from Paris. Now,
Wow.
why they did that, I don't know, but but
Mm.
she was. There's those famous pictures of her in her uniform from World War II,
Mm.
speaking uh, before Dr. King and the "I Have a Dream" speech.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. No, I didn't. I didn't even realize that. I hadn't.
there's a
I,
lot about Josephine people don't know that they
yeah.
should
Yeah.
that they should know.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
She was, of course, like so many black artists of the time, 50s, 60s, because she was the first black international star.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's the first black woman to star in international films, to be an international star and travel, and eventually others came along, but Josephine was the first one.
Hmm.
Unlike so many in the 50s and 60s, she refused to perform in Miami clubs
Hmm.
that were not integrated.
Right. Right. Right.
You know, everybody did that. You know, and everybody took their turn doing that. Sammy did that.
Yeah.
But Sammy had Frank,
Right.
so
Exactly. Yeah. The Rat
don't mess
Pack.
with don't, you don't no no
Yeah.
don't mess with Frank.
No. No. No.
Don't mess
Nobody
with
messing
Frank.
with Frank.
No,
Yeah.
and because nobody messed with Frank, nobody messed with Sammy. You know?
Yeah.
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 So it was that whole time where they had to refuse to play at certain venues unless they were integrated audiences, and so she was part of that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
who were your role models?
Wow. Well, most of my role models at the time were athletes. Growing up in Detroit, growing up in a sports family. Because I didn't mention my dad was all city, all state.
Oh wow.
All his friends were
In what?
basketball.
Okay.
All his friends were um, uh, basketball players, referees. And many of his friends would come over with the referee shirts on. So I was around that. So those kind of cats were role models for me. Gail Sayers was somebody I looked up to, just because he, of all the flashy runners, he was like the first. Jim Brown was not a flashy runner. Jim Brown was like, I'm a tank. I'm running over you.
Yeah,
Either get out of the way or I'm not going out of bounds. Don't even try to knock me out of bounds. I'm just going to run. But Gail Sayers was like, ping, ping,
I got a funny story about Jim Brown. I was going out to Los Angeles during the winter break when I was in undergraduate school. Me and a friend of mine. And so we're waiting to board the plane. And I got a backgammon game with me. And so we said, this Jim Brown over there. But, all right, we're not, we're going to play it cool. We're not going over there. So Jim walks over to us and says, hey, that's a backgammon game? I said, yeah. He said, do you play? I said, yeah, we play. He said, yeah. So he said, all right, well, maybe when we get up in the air, we can play a little bit. I said, cool. He's got the, so he's talking a little junk. So I'm like, man, he said, can you play? Man, not enough to kick your behind. So he says, let's play for some money.
Uh-oh.
I'm in college, man. I'm broke, man. I ain't no money, man. So I was like, man, I'm a college student, man. I can't, because we were talking junk to him. I'm a college
Which
student. Which
he appreciated, I'm sure.
Yeah. He said, I'm a college student, man. I can't. He said, see, that's why you niggas is talking all that shit. You ain't got no money. Oh, man. And he said it, and like we were like the only brothers on the plane. It was plane was full. It was all white folks. He said, I was like,
I wouldn't have appreciated that at all personally. Nah.
Dag, man, come on, Jim.
Not you, Jim. Not you, Mr. Activist Jim. Mr. Get the gangs off the street, Jim.
He got us good. Oh man.
Yeah.
So somebody said, did you guys play on the plane? Nah, I ain't go nowhere near that brother after that, man.
We ain't gonna piss him off for no kind of reason.
Nah, I'm good.
No, nobody wanted to piss him off when he was in his 80s. It's like, nah.
Man, please.
Nah.
No.
He was, we had him on, I'm trying to think, was it Letterman or was it Colbert? I kind of think it was Colbert. We had him on Colbert. Yeah, with Franco Harris. And who else? So we had Franco Harris and Jim Brown in the room together. How about that?
Yeah, wow.
I forgot who else we had. But Letterman had the same sort of thing, but just basketball. We had we had 10 of the 50 greatest players of all time on the show for a top 10 list. And my boy George Gervin was there. And of course, I had to remind him who I was and who I was related to and all of that.
Okay, yeah.
Went, who? What? Huh? Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I knew. When I saw him, I knew when he was in high school. Nobody called him Iceman. Mm-hmm. He was known as Twiggy in high school in Detroit, really? Because he was so tall and skinny.
And yeah.
So they called him Twiggy. And I said, yeah, brother, they call you Iceman now, but I knew you was Twiggy. Your brother went, oh, man, that's cold. Yeah. Oh, let me get you a good one. I can't not do this. Tell this story. If I told you about Smokey Robinson and Stevie and Marvin Gaye covering their head when K.O. Cody got his ass whooped. So many years ago, but still many years later, I'm working on Motown Returns to the Apollo. Remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
It was in '85,
Mm-hmm.
and I was an assistant to the producer, and I followed the producer everywhere. The producer director. I was there. I was just driving him everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day we were in the recording studio, laying down tracks for a new edition,
Mm-hmm.
and it was off key, and I'm the only person that knew it was off key, and I'm the one non musician in the
Oh
room.
wow.
Come on. But anyway, and so that became the complaint later. It's like y'all didn't know what was happening. So anyway, I'm sitting there, and the door opens up, and in walks Smokey Robinson.
Oh wow.
And I'm the first. I don't know if because I was straight across from him, or I was a face that he didn't recognize or whatever. But he came straight to me and shook my hand, and I stood up and I said, "Mr. Robinson, this is such a pleasure. I'm from Detroit. I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to meet you." I said,
Mm.
"I was there the night that K.O. Cody got beat." He went, "What?" I said, "That was us going, K.O. Cody." That was us that you were hiding your face from.
Oh man.
And he said, I remember that. It was like I
Wow.
was gonna
Wow.
make sure he remembered it. I would have gone on and on,
Right,
man.
right, right.
So it's like, I was the one, with the really with the hole in the afro. No, I didn't have it, but I'd have made sure he remembered. But I think he did remember because he
Oh,
certainly
cool,
acted like
cool.
he remembered. But
Okay,
yeah, how
okay.
could you forget it? Because well, the reason is because that beautiful silk robe he and Marvin bought. That was their fighter. I
Oh
think that's the part.
wow.
That's the part that I forgot. That he was their fighter.
Right. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. No, you had to get up out. Yeah. Oh man. Nah, this dude.
yeah, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I haven't told that story
Wow.
in so long. I left out a very important ingredient.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah.
Wow. Hey, I got some rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh.
What are your hobbies?
What's a hobby?
Oh, okay. I feel you.
I mean, I do my thing. I write. I watch movies. I go to movies. I go to plays. It's, I
Mm-hmm.
guess vocation and hobby is the same thing for me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
A famous person said, "If you enjoy doing something, figure out a way to get paid for doing it. You never work a day in your life."
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's that's what you're doing. What is the greatest accomplishment of your life to this point?
Hmm. I I liked the fact that we were able to take a 20-something year break with the Dark Star from Harlem.
Mm.
Um, because the show basically closed because we had a producer that didn't do right by us, so we had
Mm-hmm.
to sit on it. And I ended up sitting on it. I meant to sit on it for 5 years because I wanted the contract to come back to me and no rights for him at all. But
Gotcha.
then the following year I started working at Late Show. So 20 something, 25 years later, I come back to do the show,
Mm.
and we did the show and we did it in 2019. And not only did we sell out nightly, not only did we get a rave review in the Amsterdam News, we won 5 Adelco awards, including best best musical, which is
Mm.
that trophy over there. I should have brought it out, but yeah. So as the
Wow.
producer, I got the best musical trophy, and unfortunately, of course, when as soon as we finish, as soon as we're doing the show, and now it's time to move the show, COVID hits.
Mm.
So
Mm.
COVID knocks us out the box.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
now it's time for the Adelco Awards, and there's COVID, no Adelco Awards. So the
Mm.
Adelco Awards had to happen online, so it was virtual.
Right. Right.
So ironically, as a stagehand, I have laid many red carpets, many.
Mm. Mm.
And when it was my time to walk the red carpet, there
Right.
was none. But we were able to come back and win that. So now I got to raise $500,000
Right. Right.
um, to do the show for 25.
Mm.
So that was a great accomplishment. I'm very proud of that.
Mm.
Also because I busted my knee in auditions, and I wasn't able to direct it anymore. So I hired my assistant to direct and
Wow.
kind of guided it, and it still did very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Becoming the first. Now, I I can't prove this, but I know it's true. I am the first black special effects director in network television.
Oh wow. Wow.
I asked around.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
asked all the old timers in my union, even if they knew anybody here or in LA. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can't
Wow.
prove it, but
Mm-hmm.
I know it's true.
Right. Right.
I'm
Wow.
the first black special effects director in network television
Right.
because not only did I do it at Late Show, but I did it for all of CBS on the East Coast. I was their guy. I was the CBS special effects um, director,
Mm.
but I also did a lot of special effects at NBC. I did a lot at SNL, a lot Conan O'Brien.
Mm.
Those concerts that used to happen at the Today Show, they still do on Thursdays.
Right.
Those, I think they do. We started with all of that, and so uh, doing that is something I'm very very proud of.
Mm.
You know, so between those two things, between getting Dark Star back up and doing fairly well with it. I mean, we're not done because, we got to get it back up. We're trying to get it up at the Apollo in spring of 25, and their sister theater, the Victoria. They
Right.
renovated the theater down the street, the Victoria, which was an old movie theater, but now the Apollo owns it, and that's why they do theater. The Apollo itself is a music hall,
Mm.
so
Mm.
this is not it's not the proper space to do the musical. We could, but it's not the proper space. So that's why they have the theater down the street to do theater. So we're
Gotcha.
hoping that we'll be there in 2025 and sometime in the spring. So that's what we're aiming for. And I got to raise a lot of money to do that, and they'll raise their part.
Mm.
We have a verbal agreement. We haven't got a signed agreement yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Probably shouldn't even be mentioning it, but it's a verbal agreement. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what happens. So I'm very 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 proud of that. But um,
Mm.
I think that that's got to be a tie. It's got to be
Okay.
a tie because I never saw myself as a producer.
Mm.
I still don't see myself a producer. I produce out of necessity.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
I'd rather someone else go. I'll produce this for you. And I'd be like, please,
Right.
help a brother out, so I
Okay.
don't have to do it.
Right. Right.
So reluctantly I did it, and it paid off
Mm.
so far. We're not done. COVID shut us down, and we're still trying to get back up, and
Right.
we
Right.
hope that all be finalized. And then after 25, maybe 20, fall of 25 or sometime in 26, hopefully we can get it up on Broadway.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
that happens, then I'll be super 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 happy with that.
Oh, I know that's
But
right.
being the um, unofficial but official special effects director, first black special effects director in network television, and that's any network.
Mm. Mm.
No one knows of anyone else, and
Right. Right.
since no, and I got a feeling that if someone knew of one, like for example, in 10 years, if someone goes, "Hey, is there been any black special effects directors?" They go, Glynn Borders, either in L.A. They go, "Yeah, there was a cat in New York, that did the CBS."
Mm. Mm.
They would always be able to say that, but
Right. Right. Right.
no one has come up come forward,
Mm. Mm.
and I've reached out, I've sent emails and stuff. Can we confirm this? And so far, no one's been able to confirm it or
Gotcha.
deny it.
Right. Right. Right.
So that's why I say I know it's true. I just can't prove it.
Can't prove it. Right.
Yeah, but that's a good one. That's
Mm.
a good one, especially when you know no one expected that from me. They didn't.
Mm. Mm. Nor did
Like
you
people,
expect that of yourself.
I didn't expect that of myself. Absolutely not.
Mm.
That really fell out of the sky and into my lap, and I had
Mm.
no idea that I'd be good at it.
Mm.
You just never know until an opportunity presents itself or you go after the opportunity. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
have to deal. You have to prove yourself with it, and I proved myself with it many times over.
Right.
And
Right.
so I'm very very proud of that. But you know, I say that no one expected of me. Like for example, no one ever mentioned it at my high school. to this very day. No one's ever mentioned, our guy. He's the one doing it at CBS at the Late Show.
Mm.
4 years doing Survivor. I didn't go to the island, but we brought the island to us when they do the $1 million um payoff.
Oh,
That's
okay,
not on the
okay.
island. That we did that in the S. Sullivan Theater. We just cleared everything out and made it look like the island.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay,
but
okay.
with a live audience
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
But if you only shoot towards the stage, all you see is with the island. But
Right.
then you do a reverse shot, then you will see the audience.
Okay,
But
got you,
but we
got
did it. We with the little bridges, with the trees, with the
you. Hmm.
everything. We made it look
Wow.
just like it was out there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
so but
Wow.
so I got 4 credits, 5 credits actually
Mm.
on Survivor,
Mm-hmm.
and
Wow.
but nobody in my high school ever went, "Oh, look, that's our guy." No, no.
Right,
Now
right,
the
right.
shit that they do in Detroit. Oh yeah, what's his name? You know, he did the weather for so and so and so and so,
Right,
or
right.
so and so went to Turkey, or so and so
Yeah.
went to Jamaica for the 38th time, or
Uh,
they broadcast all of that, but not once did anyone says, yeah, he's an award-winning producer. He's
yeah,
um
you behind the scenes, so they
but
don't
yeah,
see you. So.
well, it's not that they see me on Facebook, the ones that see me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not one of the people they expected it from. There's
Okay,
that
I
group
got
of
you.
people that you expect certain things from.
Right, right.
And when you expect it from them, you expect it from them. But when
Mm.
someone steps out that you don't expect any of that from, it's like, well, how did we miss that? Or
Right,
whatever.
right,
I
right.
I didn't stay for the audition of um um the play. I can't think of the play now.
Oh, raising the sun.
Raising the Sun, thank you,
Right,
sir.
right. Mm-hmm.
Um yeah, so there was, you know,
When you
so
said that, that hit home,
did it really?
because I was doing, I was trying to do stand up comedy for a while, and when I
Same
went
here.
out to Los Angeles, um, I got to the door of the comedy store. I had my hand on the handle, and I couldn't go inside.
Yeah.
Couldn't go inside.
Yeah,
Scared,
I
man.
mean,
I was petrified, man.
yeah, yeah. It's. But the thing is, eventually I kept going back and going back and going back until I realized, oh shit, I'm home.
Mm, right,
It
right,
took me
right,
years to
right.
find out. You always did have a really good touch as a performer. When you started coming in and working out with us. But
Mm.
you were already in the army and coming home and on leave or whatever you were doing at the time.
Oh
Or
yeah.
maybe you were out
Oh,
at
I
that
just got
point.
that's. I had just gotten out.
You just
Yeah,
gotten out. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I
yeah.
put you in something right away too, didn't I?
Yeah, yeah. What
For
was it?
Colored Girls,
Yeah, for
the
color
the little
girls. That's right. That's right.
the little party scene.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. See, like a lot of people didn't use men. Even with that production, I used men, and now
Mm.
everybody that does it puts men in that scene.
Right. Wow. That's crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Even
Yeah.
on Broadway, they put men in that scene.
Is that right?
Yeah. I
Wow.
think they did the last Broadway, but I know when I saw it on PBS, they had men in that scene.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. For great performances. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
So I went, okay, we were on to something.
Exactly.
We
Exactly.
were on to something. But yeah,
Wow.
but you came in and you did, things with us and
Yeah.
workshops and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you got to touch. That's why I always thought you would be great in comedy. Comedy is, well, see, what people don't understand about comedy, it's not always the funniest guy. The funniest guy you knew growing up ain't no comedian.
No. 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 No.
Ain't no comedian.
No.
Those guys are funny, and people always say, "Oh, you should be a stand-up." Those guys are just naturally funny. There was
Right.
a cat that I grew up with named Hollywood, and another one named Siki. They would hurt you.
Mm.
Well, you couldn't stop laughing. You know how it is when you get that one little tiny pain in your gut, and you just you're trying not to trying to breathe into it, but it
Mm.
starts to hurt more because you're laughing so hard. Those cats would do that, but to put them up on a stand-up stage, they would mess their pants.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so stand-up, what people don't realize, it really is, it's just learning an act,
Right. Right. Right.
perfecting an act by
Right.
doing it all the time, failing, 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 failing,
Mm.
failing,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually find out how to make it work for you, and then slowly over the years build a following. It
Right.
takes
Right.
most people about 8 years to get a solid half hour to an hour,
Mm.
um, and um, and a following.
Mm.
8 years. And most people, when they hit that magical 8 years, all of a sudden things start working. But
Oh,
it's so
right.
hard to do that eight
Yeah, yeah,
years, man.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, because I used to do it too. I was at the improv comic strip. I was going
Mm.
around doing my thing, you know,
Wow, wow.
and then I started working at the Today Show. And once I started working at the Today Show, I couldn't do comedy sets at midnight and then get up at three
And,
o'clock in the morning.
right, right, right.
You know, because
Wow.
I had to go
Oof.
set up for a concert or what
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or a cooking segment. Because as
Yeah.
special effects director, when we use live flames, you have to have a pyrotechnician, which I am.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, and so I got a lot of work because all the TV I worked with. That's another good thing about my job. I worked with every TV chef there was in a 10-year span.
Oh, wow.
Because back in those days, everybody used live flame. It wasn't
Mm-hmm,
until
mm-hmm.
2008 when the economy went took a tank that people stopped using pyrotechnicians because we cost
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
and the propane costs. So they did away with that, and then they brought in confection
Oh,
stoves,
right,
and
right,
so now everybody cooks on a confection stove. But back in those days, it was live flame, and you name a chef back then, I ate their cooking.
right.
Chef Paul Prudhomme was my favorite.
Mm.
Paul Prudhomme, you know, from New Orleans.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Prudhomme would send a memo the day before. I'll be there tomorrow, and I'm bringing lots of food. If no one, if anyone doesn't, if there's anyone that doesn't eat, my feelings get hurt.
Wow.
I want everybody to eat. And so
Wow.
he was in he looked just like who was his name? It'll come to me. He's another chef. That's an actor that looks just like him. They
Mm.
could pass for twin brothers. Anyway, they were both in wheelchairs. They would come in his wheelchair, and we would have a stove inside the studio that he would do his stuff on camera with the hosts. And then we had a stove set up in the hallway so that he would, you know, come out and the food was cooking on the stoves in the hallway, and he would stand up in his chair and serve people. Long line of people
Wow.
would come because they knew Paul Prudhomme was there. People who worked up on the 30th floor in accounting would come
Wow.
downstairs
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
their Tupperware,
What? No.
and Paul
Wow.
Prudhomme would serve everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dom DeLuise.
Dom
Dom
DeLuise. Yeah,
DeLuise
yeah,
and
yeah,
Paul
yeah, yeah.
Prudhomme looked
Yeah,
like
yeah.
twins.
Okay. Yeah.
They dressed alike. They were both in a wheelchair.
Mm.
They both had the beard. They both had the white hat on. They looked
Mm.
exactly the same, and they both could cook their butts off.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Wow. That's
and so
crazy.
and I used to I worked with Martha Stewart a bunch of times, and she was the only person of all the chefs, and all the chefs made sure the crew ate. Not not my girl.
No.
Martha would have the food packed as soon as Dave or whoever would taste the food and
Mm.
the segment was over, and we'd go to commercial and we'd wheel the stove and everything off. Martha Stewart's crew would come over and sweep that stuff up and take it out to Connecticut and feed the dogs.
No.
They would never feed the crew. Martha
No.
Stewart never fed
Wow.
the crew, ever.
Wow.
The only one. And I worked with, like I said, for 10 years, 12 years, I worked with every TV chef there was.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not
Wow.
Martha Stewart. And I worked with her a bunch of times. A
Wow.
bunch. I was there the day she was, I only want to talk about I just want to do my salad. I want to work on my salad. And they're like, well, yeah, but aren't you going to jail? I just want to work on my salad.
Oh, wow. Dang.
Yeah, I was right there the whole
Mm.
time. Like,
Mm.
wow. Yes. What was it? The thing with the stock market that she did.
Oh, was like insider trading or
Insider
something?
trading.
Yeah, yeah,
Insider
yeah,
trading.
yeah,
It hit the
yeah.
news, and of course, this is a news story. This is a news show. So
Right,
all the
right,
anchors is who's there it was with her, and of course, they have to ask the questions. And
right,
she's like,
right.
"Oh, I just want to work on my salad."
Oh,
Yeah,
come
well,
on.
he about to do 3 to 5, baby.
Yeah, right, right, right.
That's news to us
Yeah,
around
I
here.
know that's right.
Yeah. So,
What's on your bucket list?
ooh, uh, travel something I haven't done any of really.
Mm.
Uh, I have a strange bucket list in terms of travel.
Mm.
One of my favorite shows on television is Ancient Aliens. I don't know if you've
You and
ever
my cousin Ron.
on the
I
History Channel.
yeah.
Love Ancient Aliens
Mm.
because what Ancient Aliens does is it says, "Here's all the proof right in your face. It's all over the world. There's no way human beings could have done this. It's proof. Now we got to find a way to prove it. But the proof is right there.
It's
That's
right there.
proof. Yeah. And so I want to see a lot of these places around the world, and they keep finding new ones.
Mm.
Every megaliths, monoliths, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding stuff scratched on gigantic things on the side of mountains, gigantic things on the top of mountains. That the only way that it could be made, or the only reason it could be made, is because you could see it from the air.
Mm-hmm.
And this was made long before planes.
Right.
And the only reason they knew those things were there because in the 20s they were in a plane, they flew over and they went, "Wow, what is that?"
Right.
I would love to go around the world and see a lot of these places for myself.
Oh, okay.
The sheer size of them and the way that they were constructed is absolute perfection. When they cut a 2,000-pound stone,
Right.
it's perfectly cut.
Right. And then
And
with
to
the
this,
crude tools that they had back then.
you had today to do the exact same thing. You need laser, laser guided tools with diamond head drill bits.
Right.
Back then they had rocks and chicken bones. Is that perfect yet, Bob? I don't know. There's another 300 years. We'll see.
Right.
Yeah. So I would. That's on my bucket list. I would love to go to South America and Central America to see all the pyramids down, the step pyramids down there.
Right.
But again, it's the vast size of them.
Right.
It's not just that they built these things. It's like, and the rocks in every single case, they have these gigantic structures. I'm not going to talk about the structures, not even just the etchings and whatever, but the structures are so vast. But there's no chip. There's no waste. If you're going to carve anything, there's going to be waste. It's going to be loose rock. And as big as this is, loose rock everywhere. Tons and tons and tons of shavings. There's none. In the pyramids, none.
Right.
The pyramids down in South, none. And there's pyramids on every continent. They just in different shapes. They're in Asia. There's no leftover rock. There's no tools. There's no plans. It's just this thing that's absolute perfection. You put a leveler on it and it's perfect.
Right.
And you can run your finger across it. It's so sharp it'll cut you. This is 1,000 years later.
Right.
So my whole thing is, well, who did that? There's no way in the world you did that. I just want to be able to go see it, touch it, and say, yep.
I was
who
there.
knows? I was there.
Right,
I was
right.
there. I saw it. So that's on my bucket list.
What skill would you most like to learn?
One of the things I really wanted to do when I first started all this stuff was to be a film director. I did some little short stuff, but I mean, I would love to be the type of film director where they don't even say, "Well, what's your project?" Like, you got a new project? Yeah, here's the money.
Right.
Here's the money. Just go do something. Just go do it. That's a great skill to have.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because for me, it's all about storytelling. Whether we're telling a tale or we're telling the truth, it connects with people. Communications connects with people, and connecting with people has always been my thing. Obviously I like to talk. Just all forms of communication. It stands out to me, and so yeah, that would be a cool thing.
What makes you unique? And you are unique. You got to know that. You got to know that. All of my friends are unique.
Yeah.
In one way or another,
Everybody's unique, and so the question
Some
is,
more
how am I
so than
unique?
others. Though.
Yeah. I mean, even the ones that's less unique are still unique in the sense of how they do what they don't do.
Right, right. But I mean, a lot of people follow the crowd.
Yeah, I've never
You
done that.
exactly.
Yeah. No, that's not my thing. I do not follow the crowd. I could care less what the crowd does. I could care less what the crowd thinks. I could care less how the crowd dresses. I could care less. I could not care less on a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of those things I learned along the way because as a teenager, yeah, I want to look like everybody and dress like
Yeah,
everybody and do what
yeah.
everybody else does, and
You want to fit in.
I want to fit in. Yeah,
Hmm.
and then I got to a point in my life it was like I don't care if I fit in. I fit in
Right,
my
right,
world.
right.
Um, there's a lot of regret because things didn't work out the way I wanted them to work out when I wanted them to work out.
Mm.
But that's okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I think I don't know if that makes me unique to look at it that way, but I just think that yeah, I I'm I try to march to my own drummer, and my drummer has a very syncopated
Mm.
drumming style,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I march to that, and
Right.
I like to be my own person. Um, has that led to things not working my way sometimes? Yeah.
Mm.
So
Right,
you know,
right. Hey, that's cool too.
so you know,
That's
it's
cool
all
too.
right.
Hmm.
I've just never really been the type that wants to fit in. You
Mm.
know, there's certain things we got to have. I mean, when I was a young man, I definitely just wanted to fit in with my friends, but more so, I was forever. Well, I was gonna say forever a bachelor. I did have a stint of marriage there for a minute,
Mm.
but even with that, I wanted to be unique enough where I would attract somebody.
Right, right, right,
But it
right,
was not nothing that I was actually trying to do.
right,
I
right,
did
right,
think that we all want to be attractive in one way or another if we do it by look, style, or intellect.
right, right,
You know,
right.
I think somewhere along the line, I've tried to fall on intellect. I don't know if I succeed in that, but I certainly
Oh no, please,
go along
please.
that line.
Yeah. When I was in sixth grade, my sixth grade teacher told me that I was a nonconformist, and she
Ah,
brought my parents in, and the principal, and the school psychologist, and it's like he's a nonconformist. He refuses to be like everybody else,
wow.
And at first, I was hurt. I was like, "What do you mean I'm a nonconformist?" You
What?
know, but in retrospect,
Yeah,
I am a nonconformist, and I'm
yeah,
not like everybody else.
yeah.
Instead of that being something that you would throw in someone's face and 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 look at them differently as a result, that's something that should be celebrated.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons I loved working with kids in the arts
Mm.
and even in sports. Because
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
coached and whatnot. I coached
Mm-hmm.
football and basketball. Um, the thing is you try to get everybody to do things the same at first,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just to get a way of doing things. So we
Right.
have a technique that we all share. Once we share that technique or that method, now it is your job to find yourself within that and on the outside of that. But you have this foundation now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that was always important to me is
Mm.
to help kids find their uniqueness. You know, there's a young brother that used to work out with us when you guys were younger. You're not that much younger than me, but
Yeah.
you're a little older than a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of the cats that I'm so proud of that you know well is Brian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Brian Day.
Mm-hmm.
Now this was a shy kid, was he not?
Yeah. Understatement.
He was a big shy kid.
Mm-hmm.
Theater brought him out of his
Yeah.
shell. He
Yeah.
found himself.
Yeah.
Now he's
Yeah.
doing great theater
Doing
work
really
down
well. Yeah. I'm proud
in
of that
North
brother.
Carolina. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's married. He's got a family. His
Mm-hmm.
son looks like he's an intelligent young man. He's not a knucklehead by no
No.
stretch of the
No. Not at all.
imagination. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I see him as one of my success stories, not that I have a great deal to do with it of who he became, but I like to think that I helped him find his uniqueness
Right, right, right,
because he he had, and I've always told you got it. Whatever is inside of you is yours,
right.
and then you let that go. But he's like in my life, and I've had a lot of students in a lot of states,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
cities and whatnot. But he's really up there because he really grabbed uniqueness by the horns and made it a powerful thing for himself.
Yeah, yes, he did. Yes, he
Yeah.
did. I got two more questions.
Okay.
Um, what's your favorite movie and who's your favorite actor or actress?
I don't know if I have a favorite actor. I like a lot of different actors for a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One of my favorite movies, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the first one that comes to mind. I love Shawshank Redemption.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
What a
I do
great
too.
story. And
Yeah,
it's just a really beautifully written story.
yeah. I
Um,
watch it every time it comes on television.
every single time it comes on television,
Mm.
I don't ever get tired of watching that movie.
Right, right.
Um, again, it's the story. I mean, the performances are exquisite
Oh yeah, yeah,
by
yeah,
everybody,
yeah.
but the story is good. And I like stories that also that a lot of times black folks have a problem with. But see, they're not looking at them as stories; they're looking at them as politics.
Right, right,
And
right,
and
right.
and, and one of those stories is the Green Mile.
Green Mile. Mm.
Love the story.
Mm.
You know, it has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to
Mm-hmm.
do. He didn't have to be a big black dude that with the magic dust and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
he was. So
Yeah,
what?
right, right.
You know, it's just and both of those stories, Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile, are both short stories by um, Stephen King.
Oh wow.
They're not short stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
His short stories make the best movies. His novels, to me, with the exception of Carrie, maybe, and the
Mm.
exception of um, uh, I can't think of it. Where the cat up in Denver in the wintertime, Jack Nicholson, The Shining.
Right.
The
I see what
Shining
you're
is
saying.
also
Mm-hmm.
that's a Stephen King novel, but they say that that particular production is not as much Stephen King as some of the other productions that happened.
Mm.
Um, but those two, Green Mile and because I just like the way Stephen King writes, especially
Mm.
short stories.
Right, right.
Um, Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is a great story, regardless of who's in it,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who's back, who's about. It's a great story
Mm-hmm.
because you have this cat, and it is a brilliant story. You have this cat who obviously is very slow, as they would say today, or
Right. On
maybe
the
other
spectrum.
day, yeah, on the spectrum.
Mm.
But he does all these brilliant things.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's there in all the most important points in history.
Yeah. Right.
Come on, really? The most important points in history. He was there when um talking to Kennedy before Kennedy got shot. He was,
Mm. Mm.
just everybody, just
Right.
on and on and on. But and so it's in order to put, and they have these stories in the South. They used to call, my grandfather used to call about old lies, old Southern
Yeah.
lies,
Yeah. Right.
old
Right.
tale. And
Yeah.
Forrest Gump is one of them. It's one of those
Mm.
old Southern lies,
Mm.
and so that movie stands out for me.
Okay.
I tell you my favorite Spike Lee film,
What's that?
Inside Man.
And was Denzel in that?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
very sharp, very smart film. It
Mm.
doesn't feel like a Spike Lee film,
Mm.
and it's a caper film.
Mm.
And the thing is, the ending nobody sees coming. I love stories with surprise endings.
Right. Yeah. I do too.
If you twist me at the end, I like that a lot.
Man.
Um, and so Inside Man has that. Um, I'm trying to think who else I got. I can't think of everybody. It's a lot of films that I love. I just
Mm.
can't. Just can't think of them off the top of
Oh
my head.
no, man!
And then the ones that I remember, the ones that were just on television. I go, oh yeah, that was on. So yeah, so that's how I remember those. Because Green Mile was on the other day, and Inside Man was on yesterday. And
Okay.
But Shawshank Redemption is the first one that comes to my mind all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. It's just a great story.
Last question.
Yeah.
Tell me your life story in one sentence.
Glynn Borders was a dreamer who sometimes got inside his dreams.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. This has been another episode of In the Black of My Mind podcast. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Until next week, y'all be blessed.